If ever there was a console or a console generation to define me, it would most certainly be the PlayStation 2, as well as just that entire era between like the GameCube and the original Xbox and whatnot. And I don't know, man, life has just been a little complicated lately, so I wanted to talk about something that always grounds me no matter what's going on in my life, no matter if I'm sad, happy, angry, distressed, it doesn't matter. It's the PlayStation 2. Where do we even begin with the PlayStation 2? Well, I am very much a PS2 baby, right? Like, I was born during that generation, and that is, like, what I grew up with. GTA 3, God of War, Resident Evil 4, SpongeBob SquarePants, Battle for Bikini Bottom, Lego Star Wars, and then eventually Lego Batman. All the movie tie-in games from the era, you think, like, Kung Fu Panda, Finding Nemo, Cars, oh my gosh, I loved Cars, and still do. I literally, so back in the day, right, in, like, 2010, when my parents got a divorce, we moved, and during that move, unfortunately, I ended up losing some of my games for one reason or another, and unfortunately, my Cars game was one of them. However, I literally just repurchased it like a year or two ago so I could play through it again and have it back in my collection because I love that game so much. In fact, my favorite video game of all time is from this era. Now, unfortunately, it's a greatest hits copy. I don't like greatest hits cases. I gotta buy a black label at some point, but this is my original, or this isn't my original copy, but it's one of my original copies, because originally I had a black label, and then after my parents got a divorce, I had to get the game again so I could have it both at my dad's house and my mom's house, because I love this game so much, and I had a PS2 at both houses, so I just really wanted to have Resident Evil 4 at both places. So my mom ended up hooking me up with a copy from GameStop. However, unfortunately, the greatest hits one is all that they had when we went, so I was like, alright, you know, we'll go with that. Back then, I wasn't as, like, whatever about greatest hits cases, but now that I'm really into collecting nowadays, it's like, this red stain in my collection, but I'm just glad to still have the game and still have my original copy. The fact that this is one of my original copies means more to me than the fact that it's the greatest hits, so I'll get to the black label at some point. But man, where do we even begin with this? Well, first, I just want to say that I owe so much to the PlayStation 2, right? Because it's no secret that growing up, I didn't exactly have the best childhood. You know, my parents would fight a lot. My dad was abusive. Both of my parents abused substances and alcohol and such, so it was just a very rough and toxic environment. But anytime I turned on the PlayStation 2, none of that really mattered anymore, you know? Like, sure, my parents were fighting, sure, I could hear, like, glass getting smashed and people storming out the house and doors getting slammed or whatever, but I didn't really give a shit because, you know, I was in the middle of, like, Lego Batman beating up some Lego dudes, taking Mr. Freeze to jail, I was hunting down the Joker, oh, I was playing Cars, driving around Radiator Springs, I was playing Finding Nemo and swimming for my life away from Bruce. Like, video games have always been my, not even just escape from life, but they've always been a safe place for me. So safe for me, in fact, that I literally listen to video game soundtracks in my room at night. Like, for example, the other night, I was just feeling a little empty inside for one reason or another, so I grabbed my guitar and I started playing the Resident Evil 4 save room theme. That has always been one of my safe space songs, so I literally learned how to play it on the guitar so then I could just, you know, play it whenever I needed to pick me up. Also, I'm sorry for saying literally so much. It's still early in the morning, so when it's early, my vocabulary isn't all the way there. Sometimes I say like too much, sometimes I say literally too much. It just sort of happens. Or Firelink Shrine, or like the Majula theme song, right? I'll put on my speakers and I'll just sit there and let my room be like my Firelink Shrine. It's always been my safe place. But anyway, getting back on topic here. So yeah, you know, video games have always just been my safe place no matter what's going on. And that really goes for the PlayStation 2, to where even to this day, it's sort of, what's the word, bittersweet when I get on the PlayStation 2, because it reminds me, yes, of those bad times in a way, sometimes, to, like, just kind of depending on, like, what's going through my mind that day, but at the same time, it also reminds me of the fact that the PlayStation 2 was always there to keep me safe during those times and to help me get away and escape, and to this day, you know, it doesn't matter what's happening nowadays, if it's like, oh, my brain's trying to mess with me, or something bad is going on, it doesn't matter. I turn on the PlayStation 2, I pop in Spider-Man 2, I pop in, oh, I don't know, SpongeBob, like we were talking about before, or like the Godfather game, or just something like that, you know, one of those classic games that I love playing growing up. And immediately, I feel safe, because not only am I getting to escape from reality, escape into a digital world, and just really fall in love with, you know, these characters, this world, just, you know, the gameplay in general, but I'm also just in a safe place that genuinely feels like home, because video games for me are a home. It doesn't matter if I'm playing a game that I've never played before. If I'm holding a controller and I'm in that digital space, I automatically get that it's a feeling you can't describe in words, but, you know, only a sentient human being can understand it. That feeling of, okay, I am safe, I am in a safe place, this is like my home. This is like my home away from home, or it's literally just my home. That's kind of like when you step into Firelink Shrine in Dark Souls, for example, you just feel safe, you feel at home. There's just something about the environment that makes you feel safe, because you know you're safe sitting around that bonfire. And it's a very similar circumstance for me when it comes to video games. So I always get those feelings, yes, with other video games as well, and like other video game consoles and such, but especially with that PS2 when I turn it on, just because there is that nostalgia there. Where do we even go from here with this PS2 conversation? Should we talk about some of the games? I only have 2 games over here with me, Resident Evil 4 and Grand Theft Auto 3. Some of the other ones, if you can see it, there we go, are over there on the shelf. The rest of them are like in my dresser or whatever. I gotta get another shelf, because that shelf was filled up the moment I got it, and even then I didn't have enough room for all my games, and at this point, there's no clothes in my dresser. It's literally just all video games, so gonna need to get another shelf, or maybe another 2 or 3 or whatever, and get there when we get there. I think we should move this conversation to talking about some of the licensed tie-in games from the era. So this was the time when not only were we getting a lot of tie-in games, but it was also that funny era where you would get multiple games with the same name, but they were completely different. So for example, I think of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. On PS2, original Xbox, whatever, it was like a God of War-esque game almost, where you were doing all these like crazy combos with lightsabers and such, and it was just very fast-paced, action-heavy. But then you play it on the GBA, and it's this completely different game. It's like a 2D pixel art beat-em-up Turtles in Time-esque game, and it's one of my favorite games on the GBA. In fact, I'd say it's probably like my favorite game on the GBA. It also came out on the DS, but I played it personally on the GBA. Well, actually, no, I had the GBA cart, but I played it on my DS. And then you look at other games like SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, where it was like a 3D semi-open world platformer on the PS2 and GameCube and whatnot, and then over on the GBA, once again, it was like a 2D side-scrolling collectathon. I also just love the tone of this generation and the attitude that a lot of games had. You look at games like Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, Killzone. I know I'm just listing off like a bunch of first-party Sony games right now, but those are like some of the first ones that come to mind. I mean, other games like I mentioned before, even with like GTA 3, and then you got some like other 3D platformers from the era, like Crash Bandicoot, obviously, which, you know, Crash Bandicoot came out technically on the PS1, but it also had PS2 entries. My favorite Crash game was actually released on PS2, that being Twinsanity. We can't forget about a bunch of the other amazing racing games that came out for the system, right? We got games like Need for Speed and Burnout, obviously, and then we had some games like Star Wars Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront 2, which to this day are some of, if not like the best Star Wars games ever released, especially like Battlefront 2, man. Just taking everything from Battlefront 1 and then just throwing even more content into it. I can't tell you how many times as a kid I booted up the, you know, like the most Isley, like, Cantina stage, and then I'd run around as, like, all my favorite heroes, right? Like, I play as, like, Darth Vader, and then go up against, like, the Jedi and everything. You see, like, Boba Fett flying by as you're, like, going to attack him. Like, it was so cool. And, oh my goodness, when I got Lego Batman, I put so much time into that game, it is not even funny. I 100%ed it multiple times. There was times where I would play the game so long, for, like, the console would be on for the extreme amounts of time, to a point of where the game would eventually freeze. I'm not kidding, this happened multiple times. In fact, my mom, I don't know if I can find the picture, but it was a picture of me from like 2008, 2009, something like that. And no, it was 2008. And I was laying on the floor with my car's blanket, holding the PS2 controller, because I literally fell asleep playing Lego Batman. I'm telling you, I've always been a gamer. As I always say, the first memory of my life is literally playing DKC on the Super Nintendo. I was like freaking three years old at the time. And ever since then, the rest is history, as they say, you know what I mean? It's just, I love video games. I mean, literally last night I was having one of those moments, right? I was just chilling on my futon, playing some Ninja Gaiden, and I was like, man, I freaking love video games, dude. I'll never forget back in the day seeing like those awesome advertisements for like God of War with like Kratos, where you just see all this like gnarly stuff. Kratos freaking like twisting people's necks and like he's just gore and everything, dude. Oh my gosh, I love it. Don't even get me started on some of the RPGs from the era, right? We had like the Final Fantasy 10 and 12. This is also when we got like Kingdom Hearts, which is such a insane concept, like to even think that it exists even today. But and all also, I just saw a post the other day that they're like actively working on Kingdom Hearts 4. I know it was announced a while ago, but it just makes me happy to know that that project is still ongoing. This is also when we got Persona 4 originally, and then we had like the X-Men Legends games. Oh my gosh, yeah, dude, there were so many cool games like that. Cause we got the X-Men Legends games, and then eventually later on we got like Ultimate Alliance, which was technically like a launch title for like the PS3 and everything, and also came out on the 360, but it was also on the PS2. It makes me sad that this was like the last generation where 3D platformers were really prevalent, because we got some after the fact, but the PS2, PS1 generation, especially that PS2, GameCube, Xbox generation, is really the last one where it was like, that's like the golden age, per se, of 3D platformers. We still have a lot of great ones coming out nowadays, right? We had like Crash 4 a little while ago, SpongeBob Cosmic Shake, A Hat in Time is a fantastic 3D platform as well. We got the KO the Kangaroo. I always said Cow the Kangaroo for some reason. I don't know, I'm weird with my words sometimes, but yeah, like KO the Kangaroo, which was originally like a Dreamcast game. They did like a reboot of it of sorts a few years ago. So, you know, like we still get stuff like that, which is really cool to see. But again, when you think of like the golden age of the 2D platformer, or I'm sorry, 3D platformers and such, it really does kind of go back to that PS2 generation. And again, we had some during the PS3 and 360 generation, but definitely to a lesser extent compared to that generation. And then there's a bunch of other game genres we could talk about, right? Like, we got the amazing superhero games at the time, right? Think all the Spider-Man games. We literally had 1, 2, and 3 on the PS2. Technically, the third game was a cross-generation game, and the PS2 version was, once again, completely different from the PS3 and 360 version of the game. Batman Vengeance was a really cool one that was based on the animated series, but was kind of like its own thing. And then Batman Begins, which was essentially Arkham before Arkham, and is honestly an insanely impressive game. Like, if you go back and watch videos of Batman Begins on the PS2, it honestly looks like a game that could have released early 360 PS3 generation. It looks like insane. That was also the game that had those Burnout-esque sections in between levels sometimes where you could like drive the Batmobile and just boost drive everywhere. Like, that was so freaking cool. And then what are some other games in my mind? Oh, Time Splitters, dude. Time Splitters, one of my favorite first-person shooters of all time. Like, Time Splitters 2 especially. 1 and Future Perfect are also absolutely fantastic, but when I just think of the one where it's like, man, if I had to pick one Time Splitters game and only one, it would have to be 2, dog. Come on, don't play with me here. This was also the era where we had like Guitar Hero and everything. And listen, I was one of those Guitar Hero kids, right? And unfortunately, I never had my own Guitar Hero controller, but like a lot of my friends did, so I was able to like play the game and, you know, watch stuff that way. And then when YouTube came around, I was able to watch videos on there, which was always really cool to see. But lately, I've gotten really into Fortnite Festival. In fact, I've been trying to do as many songs on Expert as possible, and I just got my first flawless 100%. It was Expert on vocals for Diary of Jane by Breaking Benjamin. I'm about to get Boulevard of Broken Dreams, that one on Expert. And it's a little challenging because I play on controller, but I was thinking about investing in one of those Fortnite Festival guitars since they have those now. I believe they're also usable with Rock Band Live, because I think that's still going, so that's like, you know, kind of has like cross purpose there. Every time I do it, if I can just kind of show, basically to actually do it, I use my thumb over here on the D-pad, and then I kind of claw the other side. So I'll have like my finger up here, and then I kind of go like this, or I just kind of morph my fingers around as I need to in order to hit all the buttons when I'm playing festivals, since I, again, do it on controller. This was also the era where we were still getting amazing skating games. Think Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, and we also had the Disney Epic Adventure game, or whatever it was called. It was basically Disney characters on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 engine, I want to say. I still have the game. It's literally sitting over my collection, but you could like skate around as like, you know, Buzz Lightyear, Woody. Honestly, I might have to flip on my PS2 just to play that game later, dude. That game was sick. But I don't know, man. It's not even just nostalgia. Like, there's just something about that era of video games where there was just an attitude. There was just something in the air, like, we don't give a damn, dude. Like, we're gamers. These are games made by gamers for gamers. We're all just a bunch of nerdy dweebs sitting in our basements in front of the CRTs, playing a bunch of video games and just forgetting about life, because life is short, so who gives a fuck anyway, right? Let's just play some video games and have a damn good time. And damn it, man, that is the shit that I live for right there. That's the shit that keeps me going to this day. You know, after a long day of work, it don't matter. You wanna know why? I'm about to go plop my ass down on my futon and turn on my PS5. You know, it don't matter how many generations go by, how many, like, whatever, you know what I mean? It's, I just love video games as always. So even if we are on the PS5 generation, I'm just still happy to be a gamer now. And the cool thing about games is that the older ones will always be available. Obviously, not officially, because, I mean, that's a whole conversation to be had for another day, where older video games aren't always easily accessible or available by official means. You kind of have to sail the 7 seas in order to acquire them. But thanks to community efforts, there is always a way to access old games that you want to play. So, you know, regardless, I'm always happy to be a gamer and always happy to revisit this generation. And honestly, I still go back and play quote-unquote older games. just as much as I do modern games, genuinely. Like, as much as I play my PS5, I'm still going back to my original Xbox. As much as I still, you know, turn on, like, you know, my Xbox One, I still play my Xbox 360, and as much as I play my Switch, I still play the NES. And as much as I play, like, I don't know, Warzone on my PC, I also play Half-Life on my PC. You know what I mean? Shout out to the Atari and Sega consoles. Don't worry, I didn't forget about you. Sega Genesis. Probably my favorite Sega console. It's pretty close between that and the Dreamcast, but I don't know. The Dreamcast has some great games, but man, that Sega Genesis, I think I gotta say Genesis is my favorite Sega console if I had to choose. But anyways, with that being said, yeah, I feel a bit better now, and I don't want to yap y'all's ear off more than I have to. I just wanted to have a bit of a chill, casual, and fun conversation about one of my favorite consoles of all time. And, yeah, I don't know. As always, you know, if there's anything that you guys want to add to this or anything you want to talk about in the comments, you know, I'm always here. I respond to every comment. Sometimes it takes me a couple days or a couple weeks to get back to comments just because life stuff, but I always, in the end, even if it takes me a little while, I do end up getting back to everybody's comments. So if you'd like to have a conversation down there about anything, or gush, or get nostalgic, or maybe if you need help knowing where to start with the PS2, maybe if you're a bit younger, maybe if you had a different console back in the day and you're looking to get into a PS2, I'd be happy to help you with that as well. I actually plan to make a buying guide here soon for the PS2. I've made a few buying guides in the past. I made one recently for the PS4. I've also made some in the past for like the PSP and the DS/DSi and such. So I will have a buying guide coming out before too long for the PS2. So if you want to stay tuned for that, then you can do that as well. But anyways, yeah, I'll stop yapping now. But anyways, always master shout out, thank you to all the Patrons, and should remember to get on the global team, and shout out the global team, and last king, and be dead many, bitch, shout out on GT, run, Vincent, Lucy, thank you guys so much, you guys are little legends, I love you. Goroni, Dodaki, Arigato, Gozaimasu. Have an amazing day, stay beautiful, I love you all. Peace.